Hey everyone, so this is Elementary Season 5, Episode 23, called Scrambled. So I'm going to do this by main storyline and then B storyline again. Um, and basically it has to do with Shinwell's death, and they're investigating who did it. Um, basically, the first place to go is Detective Guzman, who brings files on all the everything on SPK, since he works in the gang unit. Um, and basically, they go after the head of SPK, or who they think is the head of SPK. Um, according to Guzman, the head of SPK is a guy named Bonzi Folsom, and he apparently has been head of SBK for the past 13 years, which in the gang world is a hell of a long time. Apparently, they usually are gang leaders are head of their gangs for maybe 3 years at most, um, and we also find out that Folsom has been suspected of numerous crimes as an adult, but he hasn't been brought in because he is apparently super paranoid. Um, and they're also like, they don't know how his boys are contacting Folsom and how Folsom's contacting them. Um, because they have eyes on Folsom all the time, and they know that no one's actually physically going inside the apartment building that he lives in. Um, it's, before a major deal goes down or anything. So Marcus is like, well, if that's the case, and you have very little on this guy, how is it that you know that he's truly running SPK? And Guzman's like, well, when someone is killed, one of his one of his boys kills someone, it goes through him, like it's at the hands of Folsom. So we also come to find out that Folsom has several half siblings. One of them is which, a guy named Tyus. Which I can't remember his last name, but it's his first name is Tyus, and it looks like he's the best bet to talk to about Folsom because he's apparently the black sheep of the family and hasn't gotten into the drug trade business, and doesn't seem to want to take any of Bonsai's money. The police have apparently tried to talk to Tyus in the past, after Tyus was hit in the face by his brother, who and his jaw was like his Bonsai had broken his jaw, but Tyus apparently just didn't want to talk to them anyway. And we also find out that apparently Shinwell isn't the first CI to die on him in the squad. He's actually the third. So at this point, I was thinking, was it Guzman that killed him? Because I mean, and I have a prediction as far as Guzman and Shinwell's death goes for the season finale. So I'll save that for later. So getting on with the main storyline. They feel, mainly Sherlock feels, that the best way to get Tyus to talk is to charge his mother with failing to report all the money she has got in 1 year to the IRS. So, by doing so, Tyus will be Tyus will be forced to kind of talk. Jug then pulls Joan aside privately, to tell her that since Guzman has failed to get any information out of Tyus so far to go with Marcus, just with Marcus by herself, and not bring Guzman along. Um, so, um, so Joan and Marcus go to talk to Tyus. He says he's willing to pay some of his back taxes if need be, but he has nothing to say. But he does reveal that Bonsai is a lot smarter than he himself is, but doesn't know how he runs things because he isn't allowed near him or his place. Okay, so Joan informs Sherlock that Tyus keeps track of Bonsai through social media a little while later. She shows him the pictures he posts, Bonsai posts online, and the files that he gives them, or the names that he gives them. And she suspects that these names are codes. Only the people he has working for him know how to decode. So Joan then gets a text from Marcus, who tells her that Bonsai got in touch with them, wanting to give details about Shinwell's murder. So Marcus, Sherlock, and Joan go talk with Bonsai. He's like, well, Tallboy, from way back, several episodes back, is the one that killed Shinwell, and he dumped the knife in a dumpster nearby Shinwell's place. So they bring Tallboy in and tell him about the knife that was found with Shinwell's blood and his prints on it. And she's like, well, Bonsai's the one who gave your ass up. But he's like, well, SPK has done nothing but, take care of me ever since I was 13 years old, when my mom and stepdad threw me out of the house, and all of that. So basically he refuses to talk. Then, after the whole interview, Sherlock brings in an Enigma machine, which is basically just a way to decode messages and stuff like that. So, or to code and decode messages. He explains that Bonsai he noticed one in Bonsai's house, and they're going to use that to decode Bonsai's messages. The next day, Joan tells Sherlock that she's been trying to figure out how Bonsai's boys know which Enigma settings to use, and she's like, well, Bonsai uses his blinds to give them the decryption code, and if she interpreted the code right on one of the pictures that he posted, a deal should be going down that very morning. Gregson then calls, informing Joan that when the cops went in to bust this deal, the people involved didn't have any drugs on them. They literally, because in the picture it says, go to this store and buy oranges, or get oranges, and that's literally what they had on them, was oranges. So Marcus then comes up and is like, Captain, look at this, on whatever's on his phone. And so Gregson tells Joan to look at Bonsai's social media, and we find out that Bonsai deleted his social media account. Gregson's like, well, he must have figured out what they were doing, and now he will have leverage on the cops by saying, well, the cops will do anything to put me in prison. So Gregson and Marcus then go to an ADA with some evidence, or what they found so far, and then he's like, well, how did the bus go sideways? And Marcus was like, well, Bonsai most likely noticed Sherlock noticing the Enigma machine, and well, the ADA is like, well, bring me some real evidence. So Gregson calls Sherlock and Joan and tell them how it all went, and Sherlock's well, I know a way that we could most likely still get SPK. So they all get back to the precinct, and they're like, Sherlock and Joan are like, well, there are 4 people that are mentioned in this, 4 people mentioned, in 4 separate posts, and they all have, I guess you could say, run-of-the-mill, they are all victims of run-of-the-mill crimes. So Sherlock and Joan believe that all 4 people were killed by Banzai at the request of Tyus. Marcus is all confused about this and wondering, well, how is it possible when they seem to hate each other, and they would and so therefore would never start doing favors for each other. Joan says the public fallout with Banzai hitting Tyus in the face and breaking his jaw was a cover up for their partnership. So they bring Tyus in and tell him and they tell him that they know the 4 people killed either crossed paths with him or were rivals of his. They also reveal that they know someone either within SBK or working with them has been using a masked IP address for most of the posts that were posted on Banzai's social media, and it didn't seem feasible that Banzai would be using that for some of his messages, but to get to his voice sometimes, but not all the time. So basically the interview really goes nowhere because they don't have anything concrete on him. And after the interview, Sherlock reveals that Tyus only made any sort of tell in regards to one of the people killed that he brought up. He doesn't quite understand how Tyus benefits from one of the people killed. One of the people killed was named Carol Logan, and she was a bank teller. She was raped and dumped in a river, especially, and so he's like, well, how does Tyus benefit from a person who was just a bank teller being killed? So the next day, Joan tells Marcus that she knows where to find Carol Logan's killer, which she explains by saying, well, when the police were investigating her at first disappearance and then her murder, they photographed a shot glass in her house. The shot glass was a promotional item from a launch party, which happened at a club, and we find out that she blew off the people that last saw her, which were her friends, to go to this club. Joan found a picture on the club's website showing Carol at this party, and they also saw in the picture Banzai in it as well. So she's thinking Carol took Banzai home, and it seems that somehow somewhere along the sometime along the way, things went south, and he either raped her or they had sex or something, or somewhere along the lines. I guess you could say he raped her, and then had his voice dump her in the river. So what they're thinking is to get his DNA, somehow get his DNA, because he was arrested as a kid. Banzai was arrested as a kid, but he, since he was a kid at the time, once he turned a certain age, his records were expunged and the DNA was destroyed, and so therefore they don't have any of his DNA on file because he's never actually been arrested and charged and convicted of a crime as an adult. So they're gonna try to get his DNA they're gonna try to get his DNA some way through a warrant. Um, then when they actually do get a warrant, I guess they go to his apartment and Marcus finds Bonsai has overdosed on bad drugs. At the hospital a little while later, we are told that there are burned. His nasal passages were burned when he was snorting the drugs, and this caused him to be put into a persistent vegetative state, meaning he was brain dead. And while even though the toxicology reports aren't back yet from the drugs that he snorted, Marcus strongly believes that he smelled bleach coming from within the drugs. And Jones, like, it's unlikely that someone who is taking drugs as long as Bonsai has, that it would all of a sudden he would just mistakenly take some cleaning products by itself. So once outside the room, Joan thinks it has to be Tyus who did this to his Bonsai, because the timing is too convenient to have been either an accident or someone else did it. So Marcus is like, well, how do you think Tyus managed to get Bonsai to snort the bleach and the bleached drugs unknowingly? And Joan's like, well, he's had over a decade, he's been running a gang from his Midtown office for over a decade, so it wouldn't be hard to get his brother to snort the drugs filled with bleach. And when Joan and Marcus confronts Tyus, he pretty much threatens them, and all that. So that's the main storyline so far. Cause it doesn't really end with a killer being brought into custody and then arrested and charged with anything. But that's not the entire story. That's not the entire episode. There's a B storyline that goes with Sherlock. During this case, he goes to an NA meeting, and after the meeting, he talks with one of the members of the NA group named May. He tells her that about several weeks prior to this whole thing, several weeks prior to there's this teenager named Luke Monroe who called 911 and told police that a stranger broke in to his house and killed his girlfriend. He told police that before I get to that, evidence showed that his girlfriend was strangled with a metal chain, and Luke had the exact same markings on his hands. Luke claimed that he got them from a struggle he had with the killer, and it was the police involved in the case suspected that Luke had killed his girlfriend because of rumors that she was unfaithful. But there was no indication that he had left the scene with the murder weapon. So when Sherlock was invited to listen on the interrogation by his friend who was lead investigator, Detective Perkins, he told his friend, Detective Perkins, that he believed everything that Luke said was a lie. And when he told his friend to arrest Luke, he did. A few days before this particular episode, he found out that Luke wrote a note claiming his innocence and then hung himself. So Sherlock is kind of feeling bad because he may have instructed the cops to arrest the innocent man, or especially because they never really did find the chain that killed his girlfriend. And then a couple days later, when Sherlock had brought in the Enigma machine, May comes in to talk to Sherlock, even though he asked her not to come to the precinct. In another room, he's like, I believe the police involved in the case made a mistake. Sorry about that. Sorry for the phone ringing. So Sherlock's thinking that Luke's, the police involved in the case made the mistake of questioning only some of Luke's story and not all of it. So Sherlock explains that Luke's girlfriend was most likely not killed at home. She was killed somewhere outside the house and moved it there. He says that a neighbor of Luke's is usually out of business quite often for long periods of time. So Luke would go over to the neighbor's house to do whatever he wanted. There is a picture of Luke sitting on a swing in a neighbor's yard, and tells May that he thinks Luke killed his girlfriend with the chain from the swing set, and then moved her body into the house. And then, right before he leaves, he tells May to not come there again anymore. So, at the end of the episode, or not the end of the episode, towards the end of the episode, Sherlock then goes to Bronxville, where where Luke's girlfriend was killed, and he meets with Detective Perkins, and he explains his latest theory, which is about the chains on the swing set. But he's like, well, we can't do anything about it now because someone came by in the last 24 hours and took the chain. Detective Perkins is confused because he supposedly got a text message from Sherlock about getting the chains and testing them for DNA. And it's clear that he never sent that text message. So, he tells Perkins that he doesn't know who sent the text message, but he in the last scene of the episode, he confronts May about impersonating him to contact Detective Perkins. And he's like, I need you to stop. And she's like, well, stop avoiding me. There's nothing wrong with two people loving each other, implying that Sherlock and her are in love. So that's pretty much the entire episode. Now, I have some some theories. first theory is with, well, just to kind of explain what the next episode, the finale, is about. Um, Joan and Sherlock investigate while they're investigating the case and the finale. Joan thinks Shinwell was killed because he had her number in his phone, and so that's what she's thinking. Um, my theory about Detective Guzman is that he somehow is involved with this because it seems, I don't know, it kind of seemed like he was in on it, but I mean they didn't bring him back within this episode. After the first 5 to 10 minutes of this particular episode, so I may be wrong, but I'm thinking maybe Tyus had Guzman kill Shinwell. I'm thinking, because none of the people within the SBK gang seem to get their hands dirty. So I'm thinking, well, I think it was just a misdirection as far as pinning the murder on Tallboy. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm just a conspiracy theory nut here. But that's what I'm thinking, is that somehow he's involved or something. Because I'm fixated on the whole. He hasn't had just one CI die on him. He's had three, and something's going on here. I mean, it seems doubtful that they're all isolated incidents and they're all because they're snitches or rats or whatever. It seems unlikely to me. So that's why I'm thinking that he's involved somehow. And maybe he's working with Tyus, maybe he's not, but somehow I think that he's somehow involved in Shinwell's murder. Death, that's just me. Now, as far as May goes, I don't really know what to make of her, because this is literally, it seems like this is the first time we've ever seen her, this is the first time I remember seeing her in an episode, so it seems, I don't know, I think there's something sort of sinister going on with her, or something. I'm thinking she's gonna do something to Sherlock in the finale, because he refuses to actually be in a relationship with her. Now, if he doesn't want to be in a relationship with her, he doesn't have to be. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to. That's on him. It's not you to guilt him into doing it. If he doesn't want to be in a relationship with you, he doesn't have to be. Same way with a woman. If a woman doesn't want to be in a relationship with a guy, she doesn't have to be. So, I think she's going to end up doing something to Sherlock in the next episode, personally. But I could be wrong about that too. So we'll have to see what happens next episode tomorrow. So if you have anything to say about this episode or previous episodes or anything, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow.